You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, where tonight your Indiana Hoosiers went on the road to Columbus and beat the Ohio State Buckeyes by a final score of 77-76 in overtime. The win moves the Hoosiers to 14-5 on the season and 5-3 in the Big Ten. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, here with the coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips, and we're going to break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. And this was a game that really was a kind of sluggish first half on both sides. Both teams, kind of unimpressive, I would say, overall in the first half. But IU manages to go into the locker room down just 6, despite Miles Rice playing only 4 minutes, despite Bryson Tucker missing the game, and overall with Malik Renew still out being a little shorthanded. And really, as the second half began, we saw a bit of the same early run that IU had against Illinois the other night, and because the deficit was far less, it put IU back in a good position. And they really played well for a stretch there in the second half. I think at one point they were shooting 70% from the field in the second half. The lead got up to as much as 10, and they were up 9 with about 3 minutes and 27 seconds left. A three-point play by Ohio State, a turnover against the press by IU really got the margin cut back down to 4, and it was really a dogfight from there. IU missed, Ohio State hits a 3 to tie it within the final minute, and IU misses some shots by the rim, eventually find the way to overtime, and points were hard to come by in overtime, but our banner moments, which I'll get to in a second, down the stretch from Luke Goody and Umar Balo was the difference as IU wins it 77-76, and kudos to the team and the staff for bouncing back after these 2 rough games, all the things swirling around in light of those games, and on the road against a team that really needed a win for different reasons. But Ohio State had also struggled and really needed to get back in the win column. They played without Devin Royal tonight, as they were a little shorthanded as well, and a game that they fought hard to get back in, but IU eventually emerges victorious. And a solid win for this team, a quad 1 win as you think about the tournament resume. And so lots to break down on this one, even though, player-wise, not a lot of guys played for IU, so maybe fewer individuals to talk about, but certainly a lot of basketball to get to. So we'll break that down for you on the Assembly Call IU postgame show, and we'll start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And the banner moment for this one, there was a couple different plays that I had flagged in the second half, but I think when it gets to overtime, you probably got to figure out what was the difference in overtime, and that was a 3-point basket by Luke Goody with 1 minute and 7 seconds left. That was on the heels of an offensive rebound by Umar Balo, who kicked the ball out to Goody, and those guys really were among the biggest stories of the game for IU. They combined for 24 points. 18 rebounds, although Balo did the heavy lifting from a rebounding standpoint, but they combined for 24 points. Both guys, I'm fairly certain, played every single minute of the second half in overtime, and it looks like that's true. Balo, a guy who came in thinking you're going to get him for 25-ish minutes a game. He played 25 minutes tonight after halftime and came up with some big hustle plays down the stretch for IU. Perhaps the best of which was that offensive rebound that he was able to kick out to Luke Goody for what was his 4th 3 of the ball game. None bigger than that one to give IU a 77-76 lead, and a lead that they would manage to maintain at the end as Anthony Leal blocked a shot. But banner moment from Goody. Tough, difficult week for him. Really stood up in the press conference, talked about his disappointment and pride to, needing to show pride wearing the jersey, a lot of the other social media stuff and things like that. And he stepped up and responded in a big way. And you could see him after the game, how excited he was and what this really meant to him. So awesome performances from those 2 guys. They also got some excellent supporting cast performances, which we'll get to. But Umar Balo to Luke Goody is the banner moment for tonight's game. And the banner moment, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Homefield Apparel, who is now in their 8th season sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their 4th is the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. Home field has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere, and since IU is their flagship school, more high-quality gear with unique IU logos from the past is always right around the corner, like the recent knit sweaters with the script Indiana University logo on them. And it's not just IU stuff. They have over 180 schools on their site, which makes Home Field the perfect one-stop shop for yourself, any gifts you ever need to get for family, for friends, for coach, anything you need. Lots of good stuff there. My daughter's down to a couple colleges, and I would be lying if I said I had not gone on and looked to see which one has better options at Home Field apparel. Trying not to let that sway the decision, but for me it at least is a factor. So lots of good stuff there, and so we encourage you to check out their social media, sign up for their text alerts and emails, and you can find out what the latest promos and the latest releases are. Had some Dayton stuff that rolled out this week. Providence rolled out this week. So as basketball season ramps up, they're continuing to put new gear out into the world. So you can go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 to get 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And, Coach, I will throw it to you first. Opening thoughts on the victory for IU tonight.
Well, it's nice response by the Hoosiers. Two really down games and a bunch of vitriol in Assembly Hall and social media flying around. You want to see what a team is made of, and they found a way to go out and get a win on the road in the Big Ten, which is difficult to do. I thought they also had a response within the game, being down 6 and really not playing efficient basketball in the first half. With all the stuff that had gone on, you could have imagined that they would have maybe just shut it down a little bit or not been as aggressive, and yet they came out in the first 8 minutes of the second half and really, I thought, played some really good basketball. You can tell with this team when they're giving a maximum effort. I thought the second half, what was the positive side of tonight, I thought they got off to a slow start, even though the score was somewhat tight in the first half. I don't think they were cutting hard and doing those things. And then early in the first half, they had a certain lineup in. I saw the ball move, and I saw people move and move with purpose, and that kind of jump-started them. And they really found that in the second half. But anytime you win, it's a good response. Every game is not a referendum up or down on the program. It is the next opportunity was seized tonight by the Indiana Hoosiers, despite a tough end of the game, and that's a positive for the program.
All right, Ryan, we'll throw it to you next for any rants you have. I was close to having some rants about the late game officiating, which was questionable, I thought. But what rants do you have, not what I have?
I think I'm going to bring it back to Luke Goody for you. I mean, the guy kind of called his shot a little bit, and when you speak out the way he did, you make yourself a target, then went to social media and said some things at a certain radio host, which most of us probably supported very thoroughly. But I think, a guy does that and then responds this way with the best game of his career, quite frankly, you feel really good for him. And I think that, a lot of people responded very negatively to what he said in the press conference after that game. And I think you have to recognize, we've always kind of said, don't take things that are said in a press conference too seriously. It's, it's more informational hearing the next day what people have to say, because you're emotional, and it was a loss, and it was an emotional night for everybody. And being a player, it sucks to get booed and all of those things. So he was reacting emotionally to what had happened that night, and maybe didn't say some of the say things the way he would have liked to say it with some reflection. So I think anytime you hear that, you want to give some grace to the person saying it in the heat of something like that. And you know what? He proved it with his play tonight, what it means to him and why this is so important to him. And it's a guy who has been on campus for a few months, and there's a guy who obviously has so many family ties to the university. So finally getting to play for IU has meant so much to him. And so to have that interaction that garnered a lot of negative feedback from the fan base, and then to step up and play the way he did tonight. Look, Ohio State's not a good team. It's not. But winning on the road in the Big Ten is difficult, no matter when you do it, where you do it, who you're playing. It's difficult. And so kudos to the team for playing it. I don't want to downplay the win. I'm just saying, to come out and do this, don't expect it every time, and I don't think we should we sometimes get too high and too low with this team and with this program, and I think it's to recognize where you are. They took care of business tonight, and it's a quad 1 win, and they need those. But recognize where you're at. It's still a struggle. They're still trying to get it right. But for Luke Goody specifically to come out and play the way he did and hit the big shots he did and to basically lead them to victory when he is not supposed to be the guy that does that. He was a bench player to start the year and is now stepping up and playing pretty darn well and has played pretty darn well for a couple weeks now. It had to feel really good for him, and I felt really good for him after everything that happened this week.
Yeah, Coach, I'll throw it back to you real quick. I know Ryan and I both touched a little bit on Luke Goody, but thoughts on his performance and the way he responded to the situation this week.
Well, we've been pretty pleased with Goody all year long for leading on the sidelines and encouraging his teammates, and he stepped up the other night, as Ryan said, and then he put all those words, what's it, money in your mouth, or he walks the walk and talk the talk, all that kind of stuff. It's a little late for this old guy on a Friday night, but Goody was great, and when the offense works and they get good shots and he's in catch and shoot mode, then the ball goes in. We've talked about recently where the team was hesitant to shoot, and they at times in that second half, especially him, wasn't. Shot making matters in the game of basketball, and sometimes you make shots that are tough. Goody made a late shot clock 3 to really get things moving in the right direction, followed by a fadeaway by Galloway on the baseline. That was a late shot clock as well, and that was a 5-point swing for Indiana. When the ball goes in, then everyone feels good. No matter what you try to do as a coach, when that ball goes in the basket, it feels good. And when Luke Goody gets going, he gets going. And I think he was a real key. We'll talk about this come game ball time. Goody and Balo were two major reasons why Indiana won the game. But you need to stretch the floor. You need to see the 3 ball go in. We've talked about it over and over and over again, and that's what Luke Goody does. And when he gets this kind of volume of shots, I don't know how many he ended up getting. He had 14 shots.
14.
I think that's – yeah, and he took 7 threes and was 4 of 7 threes. I mean, that, he had something to prove. He came here to play for the name on the front of the jersey. I think that's what everyone in the chat and everyone who follows Indiana loves and expects. And he was embarrassed, and he said so in the media, and he came out and played. And the thing is that you need all 8 or 9 people who stepped on the floor to play that way in order to beat the top-notch teams on the schedule. Indiana's taking care of business on everyone that they were equal or better than this year. They have yet to really show up against teams, maybe Iowa, not so much better than Indiana. But Luke Goody set the tone and hit some big shots to get Indiana confident enough to pull out the overtime win.
Yeah, I think just to kind of wrap things up on him, although I'm sure we'll get to other things that he did as we talk about it. I think the things that stick out, and you touched on this, Coach, is like he really cares. So you can think what you want about the comments. You can point out the fact that he transferred and throw that back in his face for different things that he said. But at no point during this season has he – I think a common knock on transfers is like, what do they really care? They're mercenaries getting money to come in and play for somebody. And I would say at no point during the season, starting with the way he was – getting in people's faces in the huddle in the Bahamas, at no point did he feel like that. At no point has it been from him anything other than like, this matters to me. It's important to me to play for Indiana, and I really care. And he came out and played like it tonight and backed it up. So I guess that's how I'd kind of put a bow on that. Balo, as you said, Coach, is the next guy to talk about. I mean, he was we'll look at the stats, and that certainly tells the story. 21 points for him on the night, 15 rebounds.
8 offensive rebounds.
I think about an even split offensive. Yeah, 8 offensive rebounds, 7 defensive. Second on the team in assists with 4, 2 blocks and a steal. And he played 40 minutes. He sat out a few minutes in the first half. Hatton came in. I thought he gave some decent minutes. And then it kind of got to a point where I texted you guys, it gets to the under 8, and it's a tight game, and they haven't taken him out in the second half. And I'm like, he's going to play him this whole half. And he played the whole half, and it gets to overtime. And he really made a couple I talked about the offensive rebound. There was a play that led to a backcourt violation on Ohio State where I'm not so sure if he doesn't really go hard toward the ball and lets Ohio State get there a little bit more casually and pick it up. I think his pressure getting out really led to, help for that turnover. I thought he got in and was active there, made some hustle plays in overtime to keep balls alive. I think there was another one on the offensive glass early in the overtime that he was able to corral as well. And I thought, so even for a guy, again, we talked about it, playing like 28 minutes a game for Arizona the last couple of years, what could you get out of him for, at IU? For him to play 40 minutes tonight of the 45, including the second half and overtime, and still be making those hustle-type plays late, I thought was really, really impressive. Was solid inside, did a good job at the free throw line, was engaged, was another guy who, rightfully on some of the plays circulate. I know I talked about it on the show, like just kind of walking through, a play against Illinois. This is kind of the second time this season he's come under fire for, missing the one game and coming back. He's responded in those situations. Now, you don't want to get yourself in situations where you have to respond, quite as much. But I thought a game from him where he clearly had a size advantage inside, IU did a decent job of letting him take advantage of it. And I thought he did a good job of taking advantage of it as well. Ryan, thoughts on the performance from Balo tonight?
Yeah, I think that you did see a more focused performance from him and just more energy. And I think that, the video Sam Vecini pointed out of him just kind of checking out of that Illinois game at times. And that was in the first half. I think most of that was in the first half, and I know they were down 30, but he seemed more engaged tonight and was fighting a lot harder. And it might also be just a situation where he felt the matchup was better, and that engages you and energizes you because you have a chance to do more. But he came out of the box, scored 10 points in the first half and 11 in the second half. So it was a pretty balanced effort across the board. But he did get off to a decent start. And I don't know, there just seemed to be more of a spring in his step tonight for whatever reason. And I think that for a lot of these guys, it was just motivation. It was, you get blown out by 25 points in back-to-back games. The next chance you have to be on the floor, you're either going to completely tank or you're going to probably have spent a few days hearing about how awful you are. You're going to have something to prove. And I feel that that probably motivated a lot of them tonight, and why you saw some performances that were, I don't want to say out of character, but a little bit of outliers for recently as far as the energy levels go and the focus go, and the amount of attacking guys did and things like that. And I think also, when you are playing a team like Ohio State that you can beat, this isn't a question that you should beat them. You should beat them. And I think that you start looking at your chops a little more to attack and to be more, forceful in your movements and dedicated and things like that. And I think that played out. I think we saw it play out.
Yeah, Coach, with Balo, I think this has been a combination that we've seen a number of times over the course of the season. But Galloway setting Balo up for lobs and layups has been a great connection a lot of the season. There was one tonight that I'm not so sure it wasn't a Galloway floater attempt that Balo ended up putting in the first half. But regardless, I think Galloway might have had 6 assists. I'm not so sure that 5 of them weren't to Balo. What did you see IU doing that was allowing those guys to work so well together and be so effective?
Well, they started off with the post ISO feed the post early. And maybe they were trying to get him going, and then then they have that pick and roll game that helps too. But I thought he was dominant on the effort side on the offensive rebound, and I do think this was a matchup that was beneficial for him. I think he was a man among boys tonight on the boards and in the paint. But you've got to take advantage of that, and he did tonight. I thought his overall game was one of the better games that we've seen in an Indiana uniform today, and they needed every second of it. But it was interesting to see them do that, and it was also interesting to see them that they put him out in ball screen coverage a little bit than drop. And I wonder if they challenged him a little bit to move a little bit more and put him in a situation. Now, it wasn't a hard hedge where you're going up and cutting off, but it was like what I call a flat hedge and sliding with someone. Then he'd have to sprint back and cover. So they kind of put him in a defensive situation that said, son, you got to have to play a little bit harder on defense. And maybe that translated into the motivation piece from what happened last week. And the thing with all of this, and we'll get to it probably on lingering question, is we've said it over and over, is inconsistency, right? If you play that way every game, you're going to lose some, you're going to win some. That's probably where all of us are a little more frustrated that, you see that tonight, and it leads to a road victory, which is a tough to do. And he's a dominant player when he plays like that. But we need it to be, consistent going forward.
Yeah, the other performance I wanted to hit off the top was that of Kanan Carlyle off the bench. Ended up having to play a big role really for a couple reasons. One, Bryson Tucker was out. Two, Miles Rice picks up 2 fouls in the first 4 minutes of the game and picked up his third, I think, about a minute and a half into the second half. So he sat a lot. And IU really had to rely on Carlyle in a way they hadn't for a lot of the season. And there were still some ups and downs with him, but it was far, far more good than bad with him. He ends up with 13 points, 5 of 12 shooting, 4 rebounds, an assist, no turnovers, and a steal in 36 minutes. And so I thought, really from an energy standpoint, he got back to doing some of the things that he had done early in the year, particularly on the defensive end. I thought was really active there, active on the glass, got himself downhill to the basket. Now, he didn't shoot well from the free throw line once he got there, but I thought being able to drive and finish was really key for him. Had a really, really nice finish. Rice had a steal. He ran the other side of the lane and ended up going up and under for one. Hit a big three at one point, and took some tough shots, hit some tough shots. Again, everybody feels better when the ball goes through the basket, but IU doesn't win this game if he's not able to step up and offset a little bit of the void that IU, the scoring slack that was left by Rice. Only ended up with 4 points and not playing a lot. Mgbako just had 6 points. He really, really stepped up in a big way. And so hopefully this is a springboard for him from a confidence standpoint going forward. Ryan, this was a game that IU's bench, stepped up in general with 23 points off the bench. He led the way. What did you see from him?
Yeah, I just thought he was a lot more confident. I don't know what it is, but he's been shooting a lot, but just has not seemed confident. It seemed like he was doing the same thing he's been doing, which is hunting shots, but doing it almost in a more thoughtful way tonight, where get to a better spot and shoot. And, he hit the three, and I think that really got him feeling even better and settled into the game. But, some of the shots he was taking and he was getting all the way to the hoop instead of pulling up, and he was getting, his man on his hip, and instead of just having his man on his hip, he was getting by him and taking the shot. And I don't know, it was just a confidence thing. He just looked like he was more focused. Whereas in the past couple of weeks, it's felt like he's just shooting to shoot his way out of the slump and not taking good shots to do it. He's just any space he gets, he's going to fire a shot, whether it's a good shot, bad shot, whether his feet are set, whether he's really got a clear look at the basket, whatever, he's just going to let it go. And tonight felt more in rhythm, and it felt more focused. I think that seemed to be a lot of the entire team. I think that it was just a lot more focused energy this week and tonight. I mean, and I don't know, it's hard to grasp and say, define it exactly, but they just looked more confident. And I think that's been missing. It's been very deer in the headlights the last 2 games, and this looked like they were ready to play. And it wasn't always pretty, but it always felt like it was a focused effort.
You guys said a lot about his offensive game there, and I agree with it. The downhill, get to the rim stuff was so different. He wasn't settling. He would get inside that three-point line in previous games and take a shot, contested or early in the shot clock. I think even some of the shots that might have, the couple in the first half that weren't successful, I think he had to take them maybe because of shot clock situations, or it was what the defense gave him and he just missed. It wasn't the volume of bad shots that he had taken tonight. And that was offensively. I thought he was all over the court tonight. And I thought he brought that energy on the court. He was really pumped up on plays, and I forget who it was trying to get him to calm down after he got fouled, and he kept saying, I'm okay. You need to have, I'm not that pop your collar guy, but I am a little bit of I'm going to get in your face guy, right? Appropriately, so you don't get a technical. And he brought some of that toughness tonight, and that's what he really can bring. We've seen that in his defensive stance and defensive ball pressure. And I just think this might have been Carlisle's overall performance, not just the stats, but his overall presence on the floor when, like Andy, you said, to cover for the foul trouble, just the minutes that he got. He ends up getting 36 minutes and needed that tonight because of the other players either not playing as well, Mgbako, or the foul trouble of Rice. When you lose what I think is your best player in Miles Rice for fouls, that's a recipe for disaster. But Carlisle was a piece of was the ingredient, if I want to stay with that, to help Indiana win. That's weak. Yeah, we need to cut that. That's really bad.
We're not sophisticated enough to cut stuff out, so too bad. All right, so we'll take a break here in a second. I want to remind people to go to assemblycall.com, subscribe to our free email newsletter. But coming up, we're going to continue our breakdown of IU's 77-76 win over Ohio State and point out some meaningful moments that you might have missed, and then go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down IU's 77-76 win over the Buckeyes, and it is now time for today's meaningful moment you might have missed.
Meaningful moments that you might have missed.
This segment, as always, is brought to you by our friends at the Hoosier Ticket Project, where they help individuals and families experience Indiana University athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, visit HoosierTicketProject.org. Again, that's HoosierTicketProject.org. And I know that we have Anthony Leal do the intro for the Hoosier Hustle Award, and it is possible that he will get that award tonight. I don't really know, but I had 3 meaningful moments from him, so we may need to, get some kind of, read from him for the Hoosier Hustle Award, or for meaningful moments. So I'm going to go through these in order, although it's probably not the order of the importance of them, but all of these came in the second half and overtime. And Leo gets the start tonight. Trey Galloway ends up coming off the bench. But Leo, it was a play. Balo made a really nice drive, falls down into the basket, had trouble getting up. So Leo recognizes that he's still down there, basically goes and guards the big guy for Ohio State for a little bit of the possession until Balo gets back, which, kind of held up long enough, but still managed to close out to his guy as Balo's coming down the court. IU ends up getting a stop and a Luke Goody 3 in transition that made it 50-46 IU. Then a little bit later, he gets a nice offensive rebound, kind of falling down, outlet pass to Trey Galloway, who gets it to Carlyle for an and one. That put IU up 59-55, so the margin was still kind of the same at that point. And then the last play defensively, IU had really had a lot of trouble with the guy's name who I can't remember, Mobley, as he goes through, and they had really had trouble kind of keeping him in front. He had a couple really big threes. They had laid off of him, trying to dare him to hit threes. They kept talking about on the broadcast how poorly he'd been shooting it lately, which obviously is the cue for a guy to go off and score 22 points. But Leo, that last play of the game, they tried to isolate Mobley on him, and he just stuffed it right back in his face. Played good positional defense, stayed with him, kept him in front, didn't let him get to the rim, gets the block. Now the ball eventually finds its way to Thornton, who gets an open three that I was sure was going to go down based on how IU's luck had been in some of these scenarios. But 3 really key plays by Anthony Leal, none of which had anything to do with scoring or an assist. He ends up with no points, took just one shot on the game that was a 3, but had 3 rebounds. I thought he continues to do a lot of the little things, and typically in lineups where he's not a guy who needs to score, those are the kinds of things that this team needs. And I thought those 3 plays really emblematic of kind of basketball IQ and just winning plays that he made for IU. Truly, and the last one was a winning play because he didn't let the guy get the shot off. But other plays like that, things that IU's just kind of lacked at times over the course of the season. Coach, he did
I
have
think
one.
that
He
Leo
did have
play-
one bad. He did have one bad entry pass, which may have been the first one I've ever
Yes.
seen him throw all year. But
I did write that down. I'm like, I've been complimenting him as one of the best post-entry passes, and he had a bad angle on that one and threw him. Come on, Anthony.
I thought of you. I thought you'd feel personally offended
yeah.
by that as you.
I wrote it
popped them
down.
up.
I was like, Anthony, what's going on, my friend? But that grabbing the post in transition and fighting the post, which made it difficult, and that kick out is just a fantastic game-winning play. That's how you can impact winning without being on the stat sheet. I wrote that one down as well. That's just thing. But listen to what we've talked about, and this is what Indiana fans like, and why they were so upset the last two nights. The little things by Carlyle and his aggressiveness, right, and his focus. We've used words like that tonight. Well, that's why you win on the road, whether Ohio State is as good as they're supposed to be or not. All of those things, Goody backing up his words, Leal doing the little things. That is Indiana basketball, whether your execution is good or bad or your shot making is good or bad. That's what Indiana fans want. And Anthony Leal's a big part of that. I was really glad to see him get to start. I don't know why Gallo got pulled. I know he's had a couple bad games, and maybe his focus isn't there, but there's some other players that are in the starting lineup that have similar focus problems, and in my opinion. So that was an interesting decision for Woody, and it played. I mean, Gallo gets 35, and I think his stat line was halfway decent, short of that ugly turnover against the press. But Leal does those things, and I'm going to go to a play with Gallo and Goody early in the game when things were still kind of sluggish. I think it was 13:45. Gallo drives baseline, and Goody dives to the basket, and Gallo finds him, and usually that's a jump in the air, but it was well executed, and Goody got off to a good start after that. I don't know if he had scored before that, but I think that was that kind of offense is really, really good. When you have spacing, you can drive, you play off the post, yes, but you also have action coming into the lane from your perimeters. I thought that was well executed by Galloway, and a great vision by Goody to see that his man turned his head and he had an opportunity to dive into the lane, not just hang out by the three-point line. There's times to hang out and get a kick-out three. There's times also when you need to dive when people drive baseline. And Goody recognized it, and Gallo made the nice pass, one of his many assists tonight. I thought that was a key moment. I don't know that I have many other ones. We've kind of talked about all of the small hustle plays that took place. I think there was one. Oh, the other thing that meaningful moments you might have missed is the amount of time, and this helped us tonight, the amount of time that Ohio State dribbled and went absolutely nowhere. And it is
they were wasting
impacted
a lot.
College basketball is really bad on this. Like, you dribble 19 times and you've gone 1 foot in one direction and 1 foot in the other, and then you throw up some crap. Like, that was, our defense was better tonight, our effort was better tonight, but their offensive execution was rotten. And anytime you see an opponent dribble the piss out of the basketball, start clapping because, that'll help your defensive metrics right there when you just dribble and hoist something up. I thought Ohio State's shot selection was very, very, very bad. And maybe some of that was because of the effort that Indiana was playing on defense.
I thought when they did the inside the huddle with Diebler, when he was like, we work hard on defense so that you can throw up like this shot, I was like, yeah.
It was pretty funny. I
Keep
laughed.
doing that. It was actually, it was pretty funny. So I probably have lots of questions about his overall coaching based on what I've seen of them this season, but I did enjoy that particular moment. One thing I wanted to touch on Mackenzie Mgbako, and I had written down a couple things that were positive, with him, but overall it was another game where he struggled and really didn't play much at all in the second half. He only ends up with 22 minutes for the game, ends up with 6 points, 1 of 5 from the floor, 0 of 4 from 3-point range. I thought the good thing that I wrote down, the couple good things I wrote down about him, there was a play where he really had a good block out. I know we've talked about that. There's other ones that he missed in this game. But for a team that had really struggled giving up offensive rebounds, I thought that was better tonight. It was a little bit sketchy early, but I thought they got better at that as the game went on. And I thought he did a good job at times of not forcing shots and trying to get to the basket where he got fouled and got to the free throw line, and kept thinking that was going to get him going. But Ryan, he really seems to be struggling to get into a groove. And on a night like tonight, partly you got Goody playing well and Carlyle playing well, but Woodson really went away from him entirely in the second half. And so, his performance, he continues to be a little bit of an enigma over the last, few games where he's really, really struggled.
My stat thing froze. How many minutes did he get in the second half?
I think it was only 5 or 6, I want to say.
There it is. 5 minutes.
Yeah, he played 5.
2 shots.
I mean, played the first 5 minutes, had that nice cut to the basket where Balo found him, I think for the first basket of the second half, and that was really it.
Yeah, and I really don't know. It's mental with him. It's definitely not talent, and it's definitely not ability. I don't know what's going on there because he has not been the same player. And he started this year so hot, and then you get into the Big Ten schedule, and he has just not been good. And
ever since that Penn State game where he played great.
Yeah, I mean, but even before that, he wasn't. He was kind of up and down for a little bit. Like I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's just a mental thing, if he's just in a bad space, headspace there, but he's also playing more talented teams, and so it's going to be tougher for him when defenses shade to take him away, knowing he's probably physically the most talented player Indiana has as far as straight basketball talent and ability and size, and you combine all those things, and teams are going to look to take him away, and he's got to deal with that and rise above it, and you're just not seeing him do that right now. And we've talked about it, and you talked about, Coach talked about Leal, and we've talked about Goody and Galloway, and the guys who do the little things are more valuable when the talented guys aren't doing what they need to do. And I'm glad that they're learning, that it seems the coaching staff has learned this guy's not playing well. We have other guys who will give us something. And Mgbako doesn't give you much on the defensive end, but at least Leal does. I mean, I know they're not a 1-for-1 change, but if you're rotating the lineup, like move everybody around to fit that. And I think that, it's the kind of thing where these guys need to earn their minutes. Luke Goody's earned minutes, and Anthony Leal has earned minutes. And if you're not earning your minutes, there's a place for you on the bench. And maybe coming off the bench, you'll find a spark and do something better. But that has to be the thing. If you want to make anything out of this season, you cannot wait around for guys to get better. You cannot wait around for guys to just turn it around and all of a sudden figure it out. You don't have 3 weeks for them to work through their issues, chewing up 25, 30 minutes a game. You need to win games. And so go with the guys who are helping you win games the most. That has to be the default now. And Mgbako, IU is at its best when Mgbako is playing really well. He's not playing real well right now, so find some people who can and who can get you something, because it feels like it's a bit of an empty lineup spot when he's out there and he's not scoring for you and he's not very good defensively. So got to find something to fix there, but at the same time, you got to go with the guys who are actually gonna help the team win.
Yeah, and Coach.
So what you have?
Go ahead.
What you have is you don't have a very good defensive skilled team. So teams are isolating Goody, teams are isolating Mgbako. When you start Leal, now don't get me wrong, those guys fight like heck. Right? They fight like heck. But Indiana struggled guarding the bounce. Miles Rice struggled guarding the bounce tonight, got in foul trouble. Carlyle got driven. Gallo's getting driven. Those are some of the more athletic guards. And then you get the other players who are just really good players, but not as laterally quick. And so now you add Goody, Leo, and Mgbako. If Mbako's not hitting shots, then he's got to probably sit. And you got to give Coach Woodson credit. I know everyone's all in the uproar over those last 2 games, but when Mbako's not scoring and he's not guarding, he's sitting, and that's what a coach needs to do. And at some point, when the bench gets tired, then maybe the lesson for what Coach Woodson wants Mgbako to do will be learned. You could play all those guys together if the ball's going in the basket and you're doing things. But, man, Indiana, this is a good win, but Indiana guarding the bounce is still an area of major concern going forward against the type of players that we'll see in the future. It got Rice in foul trouble, and so I think that's what's happening is this staff is doing a good job holding him accountable for defense. And that's the only reason. And when you go 1 for 7 in the first 8 minutes, like you did one of those games, then you're going to sit. I thought he really struggled. He's really struggling defensively. And I think that's the key reason why his minutes are being decreased.
Yeah, I tend to think so as well. And I think if that really is the reason, that what happened with him tonight is a good step in the direction of the accountability and the things that we talked about on Tuesday after the game. I thought he really, really struggled defensively in the first half. It's one thing to miss shots, and I think he didn't take bad shots, at least that I can remember. Just missed some open shots that you hope he's going to make and get back in the groove for. And like I said, I thought, passed up shots that he might have taken before to get a better shot or get to the basket. But I just thought he really, really struggled defensively. And for all the steps that it felt like he had taken over the course of last season, it feels like that's regressed a bit. And so, again, I maybe somebody asked Woodson after the game why that was. I was surprised he didn't at least go back in for a couple minutes, even if it's just to give somebody a rest. But Woodson really rode with the, kind of six, really five, kind of six guys if you throw Rice in once he was back in during a pretty long stretch toward the rest of the second half and overtime.
Real quick, Fred Hevelon has a great a comment about asking why they're struggling on the dribble drive. I know for a fact that they really wanted to put more ball pressure this year because they thought they didn't have good ball pressure. So in my terminology, you close the gap. You get closer to the ball, and you try to cut them off with your first step. When you get beat, that's when you have that nail slot rim or you have help or you have to go in rotation. But it's really your first step. But when your gap is closed and you're really tight and the emphasis, get into the ball, get into the ball, get into the ball, that first step, you get beat, you're toast. And I think that's what's happening is Indiana's playing so tight that they might have to continue to put ball pressure on, but maybe back up half a step or widen the gap between the defender and the ball handler with still putting pressure on. But if you want to go over ball screens, you got to get up in them. And when you get up in them and get beat, that's what happened to Rice tonight. And then he's bodying. They have to learn to play defense without fouling and try to be disruptive on those drives by making contested twos by going straight up in the air. And they are staying too tight. When they get beat, Rice is staying too tight on the hip. And then when the ball handler stops, then you roll in and get fouled. But it's an emphasis on ball pressure. And then the technique needs to be better because college basketball players are great off the bounce. And you're going to get beat because they're very, very talented. But it's what you do after you get beat that's giving Indiana a lot of trouble. On the ball, how you recover, and the rotations, either the nail slot rim giving up to three or the backside rotations that are giving Indiana trouble. And it looks bad when action happens at the rim. They have to execute better that ball pressure, in my opinion, Fred.
Yeah, the one thing to piggyback on that a little bit, Coach, is to me, Leal is one of the only guys who you can tell which way he's trying to make the guy go. He did it with Thornton. Now he ended up getting a foul. Like Thornton ripped through and ended up getting a foul called on him. But even before that, Leal was trying to force him left. We talked about this against when he was guarding Ace Bailey in the Rutgers game. Like he very clearly, like in a very like almost accentuated way, is trying to force somebody to go left in both of their cases. But I think you see that with some of these other teams as you watch college basketball that have like, teams that are playing like no middle defense. Like you have no doubt about where they're trying to make the guy go with the ball, what they're willing to allow and what they're not. And too often for me, when I watch IU, I'm not sure where they're trying to force. Ultimately, you want to force somebody in a certain direction, and I find myself too often unsure of what that direction is for IU. And you're right, where they're getting fouls is not reaching in. It's all with the body. Because, as your point, they're kind of off balance, or they're trying to recover, they're trying to do whatever. That's where Mobley really gave them fits. I think he's the one that got almost all the fouls on Rice. Thornton does that to a certain extent, but he's more likely to pull up and shoot a shot. But they really, like, once they felt like they had you on your heels a little bit, they just put the body into you, and IU didn't do a good enough job of trying to back away and do that. I thought they got most of their fouls off the dribble were not like slapping at the ball, reaching in, whatever. It was all bumping guys as they're driving.
I don't want to last too long on this, but it's just interesting. I watch way too much college basketball. Northwestern had a situation where they were up 2 under 14 seconds, and a guard got switched on their big guy. I don't think it's Nicholson anymore, or who is it? Nicholson, the big guy?
I don't know. I haven't watched them enough to know.
Big lumbering big guy, and he tried to guard the ball, and the guy got by him, and you could see he was thinking, should I go block it? But will I hit him with my body? And he just kind of went up and hoped the guy missed, and he made the shot to tie the game late. But it wasn't an and one. And that was at a proper recovery. Sometimes you're going to get beat, and you need to know just to try to disrupt and not go through someone. Sometimes you could play too hard on that. And then Northwestern hits a buzzer beater right after that. So, again, you got beat off the drive. but you didn't keep bodying him all the way to the rim where the refs are going to call it. You kind of, put your hands up. I thought that was those kinds of things. If that's in Woodson's repertoire, that's where they could get better on the drive.
Yep. All right. On to stats. So we're going to go inside the numbers. Which is brought to you by our friends at Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. And if you live in Bloomington or the surrounding areas and you want your taxes done right, contact our friend and Chat Mob Hall of Famer Megan Mahaffey and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334 or visiting jacksonhewitt.com. Ryan, I will throw it to you first for stats. What stood out to you tonight?
It's kind of a puzzling game, and Indiana, I mean, it's only a 1-point game, so sometimes these numbers can be really close in a tight game and it doesn't make as much difference, but Indiana lost points in the paint and lost from the 3-point line and won the game because of what they did at the free throw line. They were 17 of 23. They made more than Ohio State took at 12 of 15. And so that's where you won the game. I mean, that's the difference right there. You were pretty much, Ohio State had 8 threes, Indiana had 6, and then points in the paint were 36 to 34 Ohio State. So it was close, but the free throw line is what made the difference tonight if you're really lining it all up. And one thing I thought keys to victory for Indiana, one fast break points 8-6, which is, the last couple games they've allowed teams to run on them and they haven't been able to get down the floor. That's one. And two, I thought they won the rebounding battle 39-35, which was a big deal. Didn't allow a lot of second chances. I think second chance points 17-16 Indiana won, and that's been a problem this year, is giving up offensive rebounds for the other team and allowing them to convert or extend possessions. They didn't do that tonight, so those are the things that stood out to me.
Yeah, I thought the rebounding, particularly on the offensive end for IU, is something that they had really excelled at for a few games there, and then had not really in recent games. We thought that was going to be an advantage coming into the Iowa game because that's an area that Iowa had struggled. It didn't really prove to be one. But 17 second chance points off of 14 offensive rebounds. You mentioned the Balo had 8 of those. I think was huge. Turnovers were pretty even, but IU had more points off of those turnovers at 15-10.
That was the other one. Yeah,
I thought that was critical. And bench points, touched on this. IU only plays 8 guys in this game. And we touched on Carlyle, but Galloway, we also touched on. He ends up with 7 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. Did have the 3 turnovers, but missed
very
some shots,
different.
Hit
very
a
different
big deep
half.
3. He played much better in the second half than
first
than
half.
The first.
He was bad.
Yeah, and I thought Hatton gave him some good minutes in the first half. Ends up with 3 points, had a tip in on an offensive rebound of his own. I thought he was able to give a few good minutes. So I thought the bench, even outside of Carlisle, was impressive tonight. Coach, thoughts on any of those or other stats that stood out to you?
Well, I think the offensive efficiency in the second half won the game. Ohio State scored 1.16 in the second half, but Indiana was 1.40, 10 assists, only 2 turnovers, shot 55%. They just were more active offensively, and some of that is, the kick-out 3 was really nice. That's why Balo gets some assist on the offensive rebound, the kick-out 3. But this game was won with the offense more than the defense. In my opinion, especially that second half. I think those numbers are really good, and I believe that the offense is lower ranked in Ken Pom than the defense in our offensive efficiency. So those are numbers you want to kind of keep building on, and you're not going to score 1.4 every half, but it goes back to what I said about shot making. You've got to create good shots and open shots and then take them and hit them, and Indiana hadn't been doing that. I thought their offense was really, really, really a big part of that second half surge.
Yeah, and this was an Ohio State team that came in, I think, top 30, maybe not quite top 25 in
29.
defensive efficiency. So, against a team that had proven itself to be solid on that end of the floor, you're right, because it was, I wrote down it was 0.89 at half in the first half or something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't good. I know that. So I think, 0.89 is what it looks like. So, to be able to bounce back for that in the second half, I thought was
Andy, the one other thing is the rotation, and this isn't a criticism of Woodson because I think he's subbed a little bit better this year than at any time before. But you had 2 key players out. When Renew comes back, he's going to take Hatton's spot. But what you might have seen too is rhythm. People playing more minutes to get different connections. Maybe Rice playing with Carlyle and so forth than what had been in the past. You never want your
I
players
think that's
out.
what we expected. Yeah, I think that's what we expected earlier in the year was Rice and Carlisle to play off of each other a lot.
Yeah, and so, I love an 8-man rotation in college basketball. You play your top 7, your 8-man gets, 8 to 10, 12 minutes. Sometimes when you have a lot of depth, you got to play a lot of depth, and that can just be a little bit off. And I thought maybe tonight the fact that they had to play – along with the motivation we've all talked about of the last 2 games and all the social media stuff, all that collectively added to a better offensive performance in the overtime win.
Yeah, the other one that was a big difference in the first half versus the second, and I believe first half IU only had 4 assists on, I think, 11 made field goals. And if I go try to do this on the fly here, the second half, 10 assists on 15 makes. Overtime, there's only 2 shots made. I think they assisted on one of them. So your 11 assists on 17 made field goals in the second half is a far cry from what we saw in the first half. And that obviously speaks to, one, more shots just went in the basket, as we talked about in the first half. But I just thought things were a little more crisp, and really that circles back to what you said, Coach, that there was very little subbing, so guys got into somewhat of a rhythm with one another at that point. But that was a massive difference, and really the ball movement and the ability to score off of that sparked the offense in the second half as much as anything. All right. I think that will do it for stats. And so coming up on the assembly call, we're going to hand out our game balls and Hoosier Hustle Award, discuss a lingering question or two, and look ahead to IU's upcoming opponent. That's all next here on the assembly call. Stick with us.
This is Nick Zeisloft. I never miss an open 3, and I never miss an episode of The Assembly Call.
And welcome back to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down IU's 77-76 overtime win over Ohio State. It's now time for our game balls, which are presented by our friends Allie and James at Bloom Environmental. They want to help you protect your home's air quality, and the best way to do that is to stop water at the source. They were voted the best of B-Town in basement services for 4 years running, and their basement waterproofing and crawl space encapsulation is the best defense your home can have against mold growth and structural damage. Mention Assembly Call and get 10% off your system. Call today for a free estimate, or if you just want to hear Allie talk about Kurt Signetti for an hour, I'm sure she'd be happy to talk about this IU win. Probably not right now at 11:30 Eastern time, but maybe tomorrow. But you can learn more about them at bloomenviro.com. All right, game balls, gentlemen. Couple clear candidates, I would say, on this one. But Ryan, I will throw it to you first. Who gets your game ball tonight?
It's Luke Goody for all the reasons we've talked about. No, I mean, you let him in scoring. He had 23, 3 and had a block, but he hit big shots. And then also, just to back up what happened this week and to stand out on a night that he probably needed to stand out given everything that's happened. And he stepped up in the best game of his career, and certainly best in an Indiana uniform. So it's got to be him. I just think, you could have said between him and Balo, I think made a close call, but he hit that big shot in overtime, and I think that sealed it for him.
Coach, what about you?
This is a lot more fun when you have a couple of decisions to make, and,
right?
And you feel good. You feel good about the one you select, and you kind of feel a little crappy about not selecting the other guy. But it's between Goody and Balo. I mean, Goody gets that game-winning 3, but Balo got the game-winning offensive rebound and the kick-out for the 3.
True.
And so, you can argue either way, but I'm going Luke Goody for all the reasons Ryan said it. My fellow Italian knows what he's talking about. You know what I mean? And we have to stick together sometimes against you, Andy, and Jared, that other guy that joins us sometimes. So I'm sticking with my mafia brother up there, Luke Goody.
Nice. All right. I very much appreciate you not going with Balo and having me break the tie. So for that, I am grateful. So I guess I'll I'll make it. Well, I'll tell you what. I might go different. I'll go with Luke Goody as well. It'll leave me options for the Hoosier Hustle Award. But yeah, as we talked about, made a number of clutch shots, took threes confidently in transition, hit a couple mid-range shots as well. Even drove to the basket. I thought one of the plays we didn't talk about a lot, he got fouled on a three toward the end of the first half. Great opportunity for IU to get 3 points and kind of keep the lead from getting too big. So I just thought he made a lot of winning plays, showed how much it mattered to him, backed up what he said during the game, and so I'll make it unanimous and go with him as well. And that is his second game ball of the season, and puts him. I think Miles Rice is still the leader with 7, but pretty jumbled after that. With that, it is now time for the Hoosier Hustle Award, which is sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, and it's time for the Hoosier Hustle Award. But first, I have some exciting news to share about our friends at Evansville Security Services. They've been acquired. They are now part of the team at Security Pro 24/7, which provides trusted and reliable security for your event or business, from Bloomington, my hometown, to Evansville, where Coach Calvert Chaney grew up, and everything in between. Just like hustle can't be measured by stats, prevention can't be measured either, but it has a huge impact on your bottom line and peace of mind. So let the security pros at Security Pro 24/7 help you prevent a bad outcome today. Visit securitypro247.com to learn more. That's securitypro247.com. And tell them Anthony Leal sent you.
All right, Coach, I'll let you lead things off for the Hustle Award. Who gets yours?
Man, you have a couple here too, which is a lot more fun. I think you can go. I think there's 3 actually. When you talked about Anthony Leo's unsung things, right? I think you can go Balo, obviously with 8 offensive rebounds, and you can go Carlyle with his play tonight. I've been really tough on Carlyle with his shot selection, but Carlyle helped win the game today with a lot of things other than his double-digit points, and so I'm going to go Kanan Carlyle. I know that might be a little bit of a reach, but I liked his response after having a couple games off, and I thought his overall hustle kind of was a big key, along with Luke Goody, to bring other people up tonight. So I'm going that way.
Ryan, how about you?
I'm going to make this interesting on you, Andy, because I was really considering Carlisle, but Coach said Carlisle, and I think his defense and his defensive intensity was great tonight, and it was nice to see him get 36 minutes. But I'm going to go with Umar Balo because of those 8 offensive rebounds. He had 2 blocks, a steal. I thought his energy was better, and giving him the Hustle Award after what happened in the last game and him being called out for maybe not hustling as much, I thought he was much better tonight. He doesn't move fast, but that doesn't mean he's not moving, and trying and focus. And I thought that he had a good night. But 15 rebounds, 8 of them offensive. That's effort. Energy and focus is all rebounds are. And so I got to give him credit for that.
Well, certainly appreciate you guys leaving this to me. Those were clearly the 2 that I was thinking of. I'm going to go with Balo because I struggle to have a guy who had his performance walk out of the night not with anything. And I did think he made some hustle plays even in overtime when he was absolutely gassed. There was one of the times I'm like, this dude is not going to make it up the floor. But like I said, I feel like there were multiple times in overtime when he either kept the ball alive, and like I said earlier on, the one that ended up in a backcourt violation, he starts like kind of running at the guy when there's the loose ball there that he probably didn't have a chance to get. But I think him going after it and putting that pressure on helped lead to the turnover. I would have no issue with Carlisle. I thought he was absolutely fantastic, and really happy for him given some of the struggles and kind of forcing things so much in some of these recent games, but being able to come back and play 36 minutes. I assumed that this was the most minutes that Umar Balo had played in his college career. But thanks to apparently a triple overtime game against Utah last year, he did play 45 minutes in a game.
That doesn't count.
I believe this was only the second time that he played more than 35 in a game, as best I can tell by quickly looking over the stats on KenPom. So go with him. I think Carlyle would be for sure an honorable mention at worst for that. But Umar Balo gets it, which I believe is actually his first of the year. So
wow, congratulations, Umar.
Yes, I'm sure he's listening.
Good job.
Really, really honored. All right, so
we can send him a certificate.
Yes, absolutely, we should. So lingering questions. One of these was going to be Mackenzie Mgbako, and I think we'll still do that one quickly. Coach, as you look at him, Ryan talked about how important he was going to be to IU being able to get close to what their potential is on the season. Putting you in the coach's shoes, how do you get him going? One thing that I noticed, there was a lineup on the court. I wrote this down. I got to go find it though in this spreadsheet. I'll find it eventually. But I wrote something down and said, like, how are they not getting him a shot? The lineup was Leal, Galloway, Carlyle, Mgbako, and Langdon Hatton. And it felt like the perfect time to run stuff for him and try to get him involved at that point, because one, you needed scoring, and two, he needs confidence. They didn't do that. They didn't go with that lineup for very long, so maybe that's unfair to criticize. But putting yourself in the coach's shoes, what do you do to get him going and back to the way that he's been at other times earlier in the season?
Well, I think Woodson's starting to do it by limiting his minutes. The next thing you do is move him out of the starting lineup until he gets what you need him to do. It's obvious he's not doing what Mike Woodson wants him to do with the limited minutes. The old story is going to be film session and that, but kids will nod their head and film, and if you don't produce, you don't play. That just has to be, no matter what the salary is or what position or what has been promised. And if you've been promised to always start regardless of what you play, I'm not saying that's the case, but you can't do that. We mentioned that, I think, on the show the other night. I think Jared did about the Barnes, the kid, the kid that's a good shooter now for them wasn't shooting. And he says, you get paid to shoot. And if you don't shoot, you're going to sit. And
Chaz Lanier, wasn't that who it was?
Chaz Lanier. So that's the next move. You're already limiting his minutes. But the other thing you can do is if he needs to see that ball, you got to know your players, and Mike Woodson knows his players better than any of us can even dream about. You do have to get him some shots to go down early, and maybe they do run some of that staggered stuff at the beginning of each half, where he goes baseline, a little floppy, he comes off one screen on the block and the other, and sometimes he curls, and I thought they kind of ran something there. But they're at the point now, if you miss that opportunity and you don't get going on your own in fast break, then we're probably not going to play you very much, unless you can really tighten up the defense. So, that old clip that we all like about, bench and rear end that Coach Knight used to say, I still believe even in this era is the best. And, I don't know if kids would care if they still get their money or not, here or anywhere else. If they're sitting, it matters to them. But winning basketball games and being your best should matter. You have your name and you have your reputation. And Luke said it, you got to play with pride. And you got to keep doing that. So those are the basketball things, and then you just got to be a communicator. I think the best thing any coach can do is really communicate, and then along with the accountability. But he needs to get going.
All right, and then Ryan, the other lingering question, which has lingered for a good chunk of the season at this point, is which team is going to show up the next game after this?
Don't make me answer that. I have no idea. They're going on the road to a place that they have not performed well at Northwestern, and I know Boo Boo is no longer around after exhausting his 14 years of eligibility. But it
was bound to happen eventually.
We just counting down the years and just kept on counting. But yeah, we'll see. That again, it's a team they should beat. It's a team they're going to be far more talented than. They're going to be bigger than. They're going to be stronger than. They're going to be faster than. But Northwestern seems, they seem to have IU's number, especially playing there and playing in Evanston. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope it's the thing where this win lights a fire under them instead of making them relax a little, be like, okay, the heat's off us a little bit. No. You need to sprint from here, because you have set yourself up to the point where the non-conference was not good enough. And it's the same thing they ran into last year. Non-conference wasn't good enough. You cannot afford to drop easy games or drop games against teams that you're more talented than, or drop games against mid-conference teams. You got to win them all, and you got to start knocking some guys off. Winning tonight, that's a great first step. A road win in the Big Ten is a great first step. You cannot relax, though. I mean, this again, it's Big Ten. Every night is tough, and every night is going to be a dogfight, and you're going to get a lot of close games. Hopefully more close games than they've had for one reason or another. But, they are going to have to continue to put the hammer down and go win on the road. And you've put yourself in the position where you're going to need to win road games because you didn't get it done earlier in the year. You didn't get it done in the Bahamas, didn't knock that out. So now you're up against it and you're going to have to go win on the road. And we'll see. I don't know who's going to show up in that one. I'm hoping it's, better than what we saw, not just what we saw tonight, but better than what we saw tonight. They have to, again, continue to improve on these steps, not just get, flatten it out. I think if they play like this tonight in Evanston, they're going to lose. And so they need to be better and they need to build off of this instead of being comfortable with it.
Yeah, Coach,
it's interesting
go ahead.
It's interesting to see when teams are inconsistent, and Indiana's inconsistent, easily inconsistent. It's like when you lose a player sometimes, that first game or two, everyone's tight and pulled together, and you find ways to win, and then all of a sudden that wears off, and then you start, losing again. You had really bad 2 games, and everyone was booing and doing all of those things. You came together, and you found a way to win on the road. It was really, really good. But Ryan's absolutely correct. Can you sustain that? I believe Indiana's going to win because they have taken care of teams that they're better than. And I think they're better than Northwestern. The question becomes when the schedule gets really tough, and we've seen, again, Iowa we can debate because they got blown out tonight by UCLA, but you're going to have to play Michigan State and Michigan and the teams at the very top of the Big Ten. Can you get those wins? Because, yes, we're getting quad 1 wins. Do they stay quad 1 wins throughout and all that kind of stuff? But you got to stack stuff, and you got to quit having 2 steps forward and a step back. You can't win games, go to the Bahamas, play bad. Win games, go to North Nebraska, play bad. Win 5 games, get blown out by 25. Now go back. You can't be a seesaw team and reach any kind of semblance of a decent season. Step in the right direction tonight, and you want it. And another step against Northwestern. But I think Indiana will be okay. But the real telltale signs the next game after that, the Wisconsins and those teams, I think that's what I want to see. I'll believe it when those teams start getting beat by this Indiana basketball team.
Yeah, so Coach, I'm going to throw it back to you because like I said, I have not gotten a chance to watch a whole lot of Northwestern this year, and it sounds like at the very least you had watched some of their recent games. I will say one thing to your point. This is, I believe, I'm trying to look back. I got this spreadsheet of this as well, and it's not coming up very easily. I believe this is the only team in the Big Ten that Mike Woodson has not beaten now, save for the teams that are new to the league. But he's 0-4 against Northwestern in his tenure, although the last 3 have been decided by a total of 7 points. So perhaps that means we should expect a close game regardless. But yeah, he's 0-4, the only team he hasn't beaten outside of Washington, UCLA, who they've not played. To me, Brooks Barnhizer is the highlight, the guy that you really got to watch for there. Martinelli played there last year as well, but what's the quick, at least, report on what you've seen from them so far this season in games you've watched?
I think a key there is Ty Berry. If Ty Berry has a good game, I think he can really hurt Indiana. I think he's a talented player. He's not getting a lot of offensive run, but I think he's one of their better skilled. They don't have the skill that they had with Boo Buie and some other players. I love Brooks Barnhizer, but when he's your number 1 option, I don't think it's as a good Northwestern team as won those 4 games against Woody and Indiana. Martinelli, those are guys you would love to have on your team. They're just blue-collar guys. They look like they just came out of the Y, and all of a sudden they hit threes or they're hit. Martinelli hits the fadeaway jumper to win the game against Maryland. I like the way they play. I think they're tough-minded. I do like Coach Collins. I think he does a really good job with a lot less than a lot of teams in college basketball and in the Big Ten. But I really think, they got boat raced at Purdue. They've struggled in some close games, and they really needed that game. Yet they're 52, I think, in the net. In Ken Palm, I have it called up here. Well, they're 52,
52.
in
52
Ken
in that
Palm
as well. Yeah, just 5 spots in front of IU as of right now.
So, they've they've done enough to be okay at 11-6, but there is a talent disparity next Wednesday night between Indiana and Northwestern.
And they're only going to have 2 days off before that game, too. They play Sunday.
Yeah.
And they
at Michigan on Sunday.
At Michigan, yeah.
Now, it's at Northwestern, and that place, but you have a lot of Indiana alums in the Chicago area, and that's usually 50-50. That's an opportunity for people to go see Indiana play. But there's been some doozies over the years up there, even before Woodson and back when the Knight era and everything else. So I just think Indiana's a lot better than that Northwestern team. And so I fully expect a victory there and pick up the third quad win. And then all of a sudden, man, the grinder to me really starts to see if this program is the Iowa-Illinois program or it's the winning at Penn State, Ohio State. We don't know until we see another 3 or 4 games, in my opinion.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, we are going to go to last call here in a second. Again, that next game is Wednesday at Northwestern, 7 o'clock on, I believe, Big Ten Network. So we'll wrap things up here in a second. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. You can use the promo code HOME23 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. And with that, it is time for last call. Ryan, last call on IU's 77-76 victory.
Yeah, good for these guys bouncing back. There was a lot of chatter since the last game, and they came out and took care of business against a team they should have beaten. I mean, let's be real, but it was maybe a little closer than it should have been, but win's a win. You did it on the road. What stands now, I believe you said, Coach, it is a quad 1 win, right? As it stands right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good job. And for the guy like Luke Goody, who faced a lot of scrutiny this week, he did what he had to do. Now, again, we say this all the time when something good happens to Indiana basketball. Can you build on it? Can you take another step forward, or are you going to take steps back? And against Iowa and Illinois, they took I can't even count how many steps back, but it was huge, and it set them back a tremendous amount. And you've got to dig out of that now. And so you took a step. Now you got to take the next step, and that's beating Northwestern. And so I hope that, the reaction in that locker room isn't, I'm sure there's an exhale to some degree of, okay, we got this one, but it can't be a relaxing now. It's got to be pedal to the metal, and you have got to be all gas, no brakes right now and knock off some wins to get yourself back to where you were before those 2 awful losses, which is going to take a bit. And so hopefully this team starts to rebuild that confidence and starts to rebuild that, because, they got to make the tournament at the very least, and you've got to start climbing that hill now. That can't wait a couple weeks. You can't do this up and down thing anymore. It's got to be all go now. And they took that step tonight, and I was really happy to see a couple guys step up and play really well and, maybe exercise some demons. Now they got to – that can't be the end of it. That's the start of it.
Yep. Coach, what are your final thoughts on the win tonight?
I thought it was a really great response. I don't think the basketball execution was a whole lot better, but I think focus, effort was there, and you competed. And we talk about it. Indiana fans want you to compete. And we mentioned all those players and all the little things. That's what we ask for. We would ask for it even in defeat, and we got that tonight almost from every player who wore the Indiana jersey. And that's Indiana basketball, so congratulations. But, again, you have to sit here and wonder how does it play, right, and why that didn't happen against Iowa and Illinois. From a basketball standpoint, fellas, for me it's play D without fouling. We can't win without Rice on the floor. You can't win without Gallo on the floor. You got to put ball pressure on without fouling. And you just got to – Ryan was absolutely spot on. Start building. It's just tired to 2 games great, 2 games bad, 2 games great. What that is maybe a 10-11 play-in game team, maybe a team that doesn't make it. And for a team that started out 14th, the win is nice, but it doesn't mean anything until you stack together a lot more of these positive things, and we haven't seen it in the 4 years, to be brutally honest. We haven't seen that consistently. We've seen a 4 or 5 game run. We've seen a bounce back from 10-6 to make a tournament. We've seen some big wins. The consistency has not been a part of Indiana's program. Tonight might be step one. We can only hope.
Yeah, I think I feel similar to what you guys have said. I think given all the noise around, this is kind of a great stop the bleeding type performance for how things were going, and the ability to bounce back and rally together, and really with additional guys out with injury or foul trouble. I think the best thing about it was that you had guys that stayed engaged enough to really be able to step up and do that. You had Luke Goody be able to come in and back up what he talked about after the game and kind of show the importance of this. You had Umar Balo bounce back after some criticism based on his effort and at times in the Illinois game. And so, some of that you don't want to have to use as motivation every time. Like, you need to figure out a way to get past that and get past the, like, okay, I got to rebound and show somebody that this isn't really who we are, and just continue to build. And I think that's ultimately what we're all saying is this is a good starting point. And like I said, it was a great chance to stop the bleeding, gives them a chance to exhale. A little bit of an extended break with no game until Wednesday, which I think can also be helpful, particularly with some of the injuries, but just being able to recover a little bit and brace themselves for what's going to be a really tough stretch coming up. So I think certainly a good first step, great win. Always good to get a road win in the Big Ten. It's second on the season now when you throw in the Penn State win. So those things are important, and being able to try to figure out how many of these games can you win against teams that are ranked similarly to you in the middle of the league. And this was a chance to do that. And certainly would not have been shocked in the slightest if the way the team gave up the lead at the end of regulation and got it to overtime led to losing the game in general. But they bounced back within the game, played through the fatigue, and were able to get a big win on that play that was, the guys who were really the two biggest in the game tonight, Umar Balo and Luke Goody, being able to get that shot down. And so congrats to them. And we wait, like everybody else waits, to see what this team can do. And I think fans at this point, I feel like this is a refrain we've had so many times over the last handful of years doing the show, of like, fans are kind of keeping this team at arm's length right now because they're trying not to get hurt by getting their hopes up and things like that, which is
don't let me get close again.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I cannot tell you how many times we've talked about that over the course of the season, and that refrain of how do you build on this? But that's really where they're at. And they've got a chance in these next two games. Like, things get brutal after the next two games. But road game at Northwestern, home game against the Maryland team that has struggled when it's played the better teams on its schedule. Can you get a little momentum going into that really brutal stretch? And so tonight was the first step of that, and we see what they're able to do coming back on Wednesday against Northwestern. Hopefully can pick up their third Big Ten road win of the season, which would be awesome. So I was certainly excited with how they played tonight, allowed myself the difference between, I mean, there's lots of differences between the game the other night, but like, game the other night is you're getting ready for the show and you're kind of like just waiting for the game to end in some ways after the first half, versus this one, I'm like kind of taking notes, but you kind of get lost because it's a close game and you just get to be a fan and be excited about it and not worried about all the other stuff that goes along with it. So it was nice to block a little bit of that out myself, I guess, and be able to move forward. And a far more enjoyable conversation with you gentlemen to talk about a win than the other way around. So we'll take it. But that will do it for us on the Assembly Call tonight. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to substack.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logo. Thanks to Coach for producing tonight, and thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Wednesday night. Until then,
take it from me, Yogi Ferrell. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Hey, the show's over. Here I come, Coach Tonsoni.
all right. It's almost midnight. Is Amy really still waiting on you?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
One thing, go to hell, Roki Sasaki. That's screw you, buddy. My new least favorite Major League Baseball player. Could have been a star. He's going to be the 5th starter on the Dodgers. Baseball is headed to a very dark place.
Oh, seems like you're handling it well, though. So
yeah, really. Honestly, I would have been happy if he went to the Blue Jays. I thought that would have been cool, but no. No. I hate the Dodgers so much. And they've just made it worse the last, 2 years. Somebody was arguing me, how great it is for baseball. I'm like, trust me, there are 31 cities that do not feel that way right now. I was talking to a scout about that. I know this is a basketball podcast, but I was talking to a scout about that today, and he's like, because of what the Dodgers have done financially, the upcoming lockout / strike that's coming in 2027 will be the ugliest in sports history. He says it's just the next CBA negotiations are going to be, because all the owners now outside of the big major want a salary cap because they can't compete, and so the players won't want it, and we will be in a hellhole of no games forever. So, something to look forward to if we're all still here. Yeah, if we're all still here.
Let's go the weekend. Hey, I do want to apologize for the unprofessionalism of my cat coming up and down. I know if you're a real true podcaster, you shouldn't have live animals, but his crapper's down here, so I'm not going to get in the way of him.
I love
coming down.
They stick Coach doing a podcast and the crapper in the same spot.
Exactly. There's a reason that everything's down here. So I saw someone notice it I didn't even notice the dang thing come down here. But anyway, have a good weekend, everybody.
I like that you talk about we shouldn't podcast with live animals as if it's like a friggin' tiger roaming around behind you or something. Coach got mauled by a rhino in his basement while he was waiting for whatever. Yeah, I think we're all right.
Who was on the show when the dang thing jumped on my chair here and just sat over my shoulder?
Yeah, I remember. I don't think I was on the show, but I watched it, and it was hilarious. But it comes down the banister all the time.
Yeah.
Who knows?
He's regular, I guess.
So awesome. All right. Well, good stuff, guys. We will
have a great weekend, everybody.
Talking Wednesday. Everybody have a great weekend. Go Birds. And
we'll see you guys.
Go Birds. See you guys next week.
Later.